Breaking news, it is official that Penn State is going to hire away Jim Knowles from Ohio State. Something that nobody expected to happen has actually happened, and now Penn State is officially all in on a 2025 national title run.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show, and this is a live reaction to now it being official. No longer speculation. And from over here, it was a pretty close race, and clearly Penn State had pulled ahead, taking Jim Knowles away from Ohio State and fending off Oklahoma as well. All of the familial ties and personal reasons why he would end up in Norman. There were a lot of confident people related to Ohio State, related to Oklahoma, that said that this would never happen. And now Penn State is going to get its primary target. This was above all else in a perfect world. And it's actually it's a perfect world. This was an in your dream scenario, but Penn State has all along wanted Jim Knowles to be the defensive coordinator. Yes, they got Manny Diaz. Yes, they got Tom Allen. But every time there was a defensive coordinator vacancy, James Franklin and Penn State wanted to see, hey, would this be the time to get Jim Knowles? Didn't happen. It didn't happen those other times, but it has now happened this time. So Penn State is all in on a national title run. There's so many places we can begin. Let's talk about the Penn State side of it, of course, being Locked On Nittany Lions. Penn State is all in on a 2025-26 national title run with everything that they're returning, and then they go and get arguably the best defensive coordinator in college football, easily top three of who's available, and Knowles just gives them the veteran experience that creates the best defensive coordinator, or creates the best coordinator duo in the entire country. Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles. I mean, this is a testament to what James Franklin has done to be able to pull this off, to go get your primary target in Andy Kotelnicki last offseason, and then go get your primary defensive coordinator target when you are blindsided by the fact that Tom Allen left for Clemson. Nobody pushed Tom Allen out. Nobody expected him to leave as the defensive coordinator, but he took a call from Clemson. They offered him the job. He said he felt it was a better fit, and Penn State said, okay, we're going to try something different here, and that different is Jim Knowles. But this gives Penn State the best coordinator duo in the entire country. Then they return Drew Aller, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, 4 starters on the offensive line. You have a lot of depth at the tight end room. You have 2 new portal receivers coming in that just gives you something different. Kyron Hudson from USC and Devontae Ross, the speedster from Group of 5 school Troy. But there's a lot of things you can do schematically with this, with Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. Their skill sets are going to be able to balance them out. But Jim Knowles now takes your defense from what Tom Allen did with a top 10, made them a top 10 defense. Okay, that's good. That got you to the national semifinal. But what can we do to get us closer to the national championship, the national final? That's what Jim Knowles does. Jim Knowles has been the architect. He was the best. That Ohio State's defense was the best this past season. Not afraid to admit it. They were top 3 a season ago when Michigan won the entire thing. So Jim Knowles, the success is there. The proof is there. Now Penn State is also hiring away an asset from Ohio State that they're going to face, that is going to be a contender in the Big Ten Conference, that is going to be a contender for a national title as well. So you're also knocking down Ohio State in a sense. It has this domino effect. You're going to get some inside intel as far as what Ryan Day wants to do and everything else. So that's in the head-to-head aspect of it. Jim Knowles is inheriting an elite defense. He doesn't have to start over from scratch. This isn't a rebuild. This is a reload. Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant are your star players along the defensive line. You're getting back a Smith Vilbert. You're getting back an Alonzo Ford. Amin Vanover still has a decision to make, and I think there are rumors saying that he's going to return for his final season of eligibility because of the COVID eligibility that he has. So defensive line is full of crafty veterans and superstars in the making. Denai Dennis Sutton will take over that Abdul Carter defensive end role. Zane Durant, people sleep on Zane Durant and just how good he is. So Jim Knowles is inheriting a defensive setup. Ohio State's losing about 7 starters, if I'm not mistaken. Penn State is retaining 7+ starters. That's just on the defensive line. Then there's Dom DeLuca and Tony Rojas at your linebacker spot. I see that Penn State needs linebackers and this and that. Guess what? Jim Knowles runs a 4-2-5. Exactly what Tom Allen and Penn State had run this season. So it's not an overhaul. Consistency, continuity. You're getting a better architect to get the most out of these players. Linebacker set. Don't forget about Keon Wiley. I think a lot of outsiders don't know about Keon Wiley. Penn State fans need to remember that Keon Wiley was supposed to be set for that breakout season and just never worked his way back from injury. It's a shame, but guess what? He's back this season for 2025. And then in the secondary, Zach Wheatley, the turnover king, he is going to be one of the faces of the defense in the back end. But the secondary, honestly, might be set up the best with its overall depth. Between Zach Wheatley getting King Mack back in the transfer portal, he's going to be a starter, or at least something along the lines of a co-starter. And then at cornerback, A.J. Harris from Georgia last offseason cycle is going to take that next step forward as a third-year player. Was already coming on strong and was starting to develop those star traits. He's going to be looked to as one of those superstar players, like a Joey Porter Jr. from a few years back, as that lockdown guy, someone who's just going to take away one side of the football field. Jim Knowles has that to work with. And then another year of experience with Zion Tracy, Elliott Washington, Davian Collins. Penn State is very deep at defensive back overall. You have Zach Wheatley. You can have him play center field and allow him to just watch the quarterback. And then that just kind of frees up that gives you the flexibility to do things. So your secondary is not a liability. They can handle their own. They can handle one-on-one situations. And then that's where a coordinator like Jim Knowles comes into the picture. And then he can do a lot of different crafty things that he was able to do at Ohio State because you had a Lathan Ransom, a Caleb Downs, a Denzel Burke. Those guys can win their one-on-one matchups. And then you can get creative in the front seven to say, all right, let's cause havoc up front and get after the quarterback. Why does Jim Knowles make this decision? Because everything that I saw from whether it was Ohio State or Oklahoma people, that this isn't happening. Jim Knowles, he's taking a demotion and a step back. If you want to talk smack about Ohio State to Penn State, because over the last 10 years, Ohio State has dominated Penn State. That's understandable. But I never dismissed Clemson when Tom Allen left Penn State for Clemson, because at the end of the day, it is a Power 4 conference job. If we want to be logical and sensible here, this is not a demotion. This is actually a promotion because of the pay raise that he's going to get. It was officially reported. It was out in the public for a few days that Penn State offered $3.2 million. They are here this shows an absolute utter commitment for Penn State, the university, to not only the football team to win a national title for the first time in almost 40 years. Objectively speaking, I know 1994, but objectively speaking, 1986 was the last one when you ask generally for college football. And Penn State is saying enough is enough. But it's also a commitment to James Franklin to give him the best assets, to give him the most resources, to go and outbid Oklahoma not once, but twice. Oklahoma, Penn State defeated them in these coordinator battles in the offseason 2 times now. They're 2-0. Andy Kotelnicki, it was a bidding war last offseason. Penn State went and fended off Oklahoma and brought Kotelnicki to Happy Valley. Same time around. Nothing different over here. So that is a lot of hard work that James Franklin put in to start the negotiations to say, hey, what can we do for Jim Knowles here to get him to Penn State, get him away from Ohio State, because you are taking him away from a pretty good setup. There are not a lot of better setups in college football than Ohio State, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I am not afraid to admit that, because that is the reasonable assessment here, that you are leaving a prior national title champion. You're leaving a national championship team. Why would you do that if you're not getting the resources, which Jim Knowles is? He is now officially the highest paid coordinator overall. Offensive, defense, doesn't matter. He is the highest paid coordinator in college football. Penn State went and did that. They showed a commitment that they are all in on this 2025 season to win a title in January of 2026. They're also committed to James Franklin. There are no more excuses for James Franklin and company. The time is to win now. You have everything. You have the offensive coordinator that you wanted. You have the defensive coordinator that you now want. You have all the resources, the amenities, the facilities, everything that you have been fighting for the past decade has now come full circle for James Franklin and company to get this one done. It is national title or bust for Penn State in the 2025 season going into the postseason at the start of 2026. There are no excuses here. You have one of the best offensive coordinators in the entire country. You have the best defensive coordinator in the entire country that you hired away from the team that has been a thorn in your side for your entire tenure. And you pulled it off. You pulled it off. Something that was not expected by the general public. And I said there was a legitimate chance here. $3.2 million offer. Penn State came to play. And they did it. They won. They were able to get him away from Ohio State, and they fended off Oklahoma in the process, who had all these personal reasons. Jim Knowles is from Philadelphia. Jim Knowles has family in the area. The fact that Oklahoma people were banking on the fact that that his fiance was going to bring him to Norman, Oklahoma, wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. So Jim Knowles, officially the defensive coordinator at Penn State. We're going to get your reaction. This is a live show, so your thoughts, your contributions are just as important in this conversation. We got plenty to talk about here, what this all means going forward. Pretty late, I've summed it up very much there in the first segment, but we'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's live show is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. This message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every single form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. That is TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. That is TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you so much for everyone joining the live show. I know there's some NFL football getting ready to be underway. So thank you so much for spending your time with me here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Let's go, Zach. Hey, let's go Penn State, right? This is it. The big deal in all of this is you get to knock down Ohio State while advancing yourself for the 2025 season. There was just from the sources that I had heard that Penn State was just not an afterthought. It was the strangest thing to me that Ohio State fans, Oklahoma fans were very confident both of which ways. Ohio State fans were certain that Jim Knowles would never leave and that they had sources and that a person of a friend of a friend of a family member said that he was going to return to the Buckeyes, and a message board said so. And Oklahoma, same thing, that his fiance was going to bring him to Norman, Oklahoma. That was the plan all along. And that was never the case. That was never the case. When I look back on all of this, because Ohio State and Oklahoma fans, I would try to see where your sources are at, because there were a lot of conflicting reports, and Penn State was an absolute afterthought. Nobody bothered to consider the fact that Penn State was serious about this. They said that Penn State couldn't afford it, that they couldn't afford to outbid either Oklahoma or Ohio State especially. Penn State isn't broke. Penn State is clearly not broke. They have outbid Oklahoma not once but twice now, from Andy Kotelnicki to now Jim Knowles. But Ohio State, I thought it was interesting that the Ohio State headlines from credible sources, they cover the teams very well, but it said that Ohio State is set to make Jim Knowles the highest paid defensive coordinator in all of college football. Well, that was the understanding. That was the report all along. One way or another, Jim Knowles was going to be the highest paid coordinator, period, not just defensive coordinator. And then the number wasn't released or anything else. And it was an empty headline. It was an empty report. It was about what, 200 words long to say that, oh, they made a counteroffer. What was the counteroffer? What incentives? Are they going to match Penn State's alleged $3.2 million offer? They either didn't or Penn State had enough incentives to pull away Jim Knowles. So other than that, it was the fact that Penn State was never considered a serious player by the outsiders. And I don't get that at all. I really didn't. Great hire. It's absolutely a great hire. You not only get one of the best defensive coordinators, if not the best defensive coordinator in all of college football, you get some continuity, you get some consistency. I use those words a lot because they're so important in college football. This isn't a 1-year plan. The idea is that now that Jim Knowles is the highest paid defensive coordinator, this is a 3, 4, 5-year plan. Enough with the turnstile, enough with the rotation. This is, I'm not going to say and sit here and say that, declare that Jim Knowles, this is his forever job, but this is more than just a 1 to 2 year plan, which is nice because Penn State has seen a revolving door at defensive coordinator, and you finally have someone that's just going to settle in. Also, another benefit, Penn State is going to potentially get some other defensive analysts as well that are going to come over with Jim Knowles. So Penn State's overall staff even gets better. It's not about just Jim Knowles. You are going to get other strong defensive minds to join the Penn State staff, and they have availability in the analysts. Like as far as analyst availability, they can fill those analyst role. So Penn State is in a much better setup than just getting Jim Knowles. They're going to get some of those analysts from Ohio State as well. Should make him the head coach. Without James Franklin, this doesn't get done. Without James Franklin, this doesn't get done. Best hire of the Franklin era. In terms of overall pedigree, right? Jim Knowles constructing 2 top 3 defense, the best defense in 2024, top 3 defense in 2023. And you are able to poach him away from Ohio State. I can understand that. But Penn State and James Franklin got Manny Diaz. Tom Allen was not a bad defensive coordinator. Let's not forget that he constructed a top 10 defense in his own right. So you can look at it as far as, yes, it feels like one of the best hires. I think Andy Kotelnicki, honestly, to go and identify after what all the issues that you had with Mike Yurcich, and you go from a top 50 offense to a top 10 offense with Andy Kotelnicki, I have to argue that might be one of the best hires. It's certainly going to feel that way. But James Franklin has made a lot of good hires outside of Mike Yurcich. There really has not been, and John Donovan a long time ago, but look how far Penn State has come in this age of college football, that they are willing to make the investment, because gone are the days of trying to pinch pennies, cut corners in your coaching searches, and go and get the guy at the top of James Franklin's list, make a serious competitive offer, and get him not once, but twice, but 3 times, right? It was Manny Diaz once upon a time. It was Tom Allen. Whoever James Franklin identified as his top prospective coordinator, Penn State's gotten him. Penn State has gotten him of the available people. Jim Knowles, not so subtly available in this sense. That's what I mean. And James Franklin deserves a lot of credit for that. That takes a lot of in-house negotiations as well to be able to sell this to Pat Kraft, Neely Bendapudi, the board of trustees. Penn State just reset the market for coaches in college football. Do we understand what this is? That's why it was so interesting that Ohio State headlines were flexing that he was going to be the highest paid defensive coordinator. Duh, because the highest paid defensive coordinator was going to be $2.8 million. Penn State just offered him something, either 3.2 or even more, and there's going to be incentives as well. And James Franklin deserves a lot of credit for that, especially when this did not look good. You just got to the national semifinal. Tom Allen leaves, bolts for Clemson. And again, people frame that as a demotion. It's not a demotion. If you're closer to family, you get a pay raise, you get some extra titles, you get some extra responsibilities, right? Tom Allen didn't like coaching from the press box. He gets all of that back at Clemson. That's a lateral move. It's not a demotion. It's the same thing here. I don't look at this as a demotion for Jim Knowles. Not a demotion for Jim Knowles. It's like I said, it's a promotion because he's making $500,000 more, or no, $1 million. This is a $1 million pay raise for Jim Knowles at a minimum. He's making 2.2 at Ohio State. I thought that was interesting that one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, you're almost getting him at a value. Everybody's surprised here. Franklin is not messing around. It's a great hire. How about all that hearsay that the Buckeyes said it wouldn't happen and it did? Welcome aboard, Jim Knowles. We have the best we have the best coordinators in the country. Yes, there is not a better coordinator duo right now in the entire country. Maybe Notre Dame would have a case, but they lost Al Golden. Not a home run hire, a grand slam hire. I like that framing. I absolutely do. Ooh, payback for Larry Johnson Sr. Let's go. I don't want to make this too much about trying to dunk on Larry Johnson Sr. But I do want to put this out there. Why did Jim Knowles leave Ohio State? Again, this is a national title contender. You could have every resource that you would ever want. Ohio State certainly made a competitive offer. He was going to get a raise one way or another, whether it was at Oklahoma, Penn State, or staying in Columbus. Apparently, he didn't get along with Larry Johnson Sr. So, yes, Larry Johnson Sr., formerly on Penn State staff, left and has been at Ohio State ever since. But not everything was great over there. Apparently, Chip Kelly was not at the championship parade today. Neither was Jim Knowles. That they weren't seen. So Ohio State has bigger problems than just losing Jim Knowles to somebody within the conference. They got to worry about, what is Chip Kelly going to do? He's been linked to the Jacksonville Jaguars and getting back to the NFL. Ryan Day is losing his staff, and not everybody got along. Let's just say that. We're going to talk about this team moving forward. So we'll get back into the comment section as well. I appreciate you hanging out with me here on this Sunday here on a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. When we return, why is Penn State now the team to beat in 2025? Yes, Penn State is now officially the team to beat for this upcoming season. When those way too early 2025 rankings are reproduced, Penn State should be the consensus #1 team. We'll talk about it more after a word from our sponsors. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is almost here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. Feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the football field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets. That's right. For the Super Bowl, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That is icing on the cake. Download the app or head over to FanDuel.com and get started. Bet just $5, and if you win that first $5 bet, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. So now Penn State is the team to beat. That is not a hot take. That is the reasonable take at this point. With what Penn State has returning, with what they just acquired, with what they have created, with the best coordinator dynamic duo, Andy Kotelnicki to Jim Knowles. Oh, but the offense is the problem. That's what everybody says. Jim Knowles isn't going to solve your offensive problems. I feel like a lot of that is cope, because Penn State has a fourth-year college quarterback within the same program, third-year starter returning, second year in the offense with the coordinator that started to unlock his potential. Drew had one bad game against Notre Dame, and he's suddenly the worst quarterback in college football once again. Whereas he improved on every metric possible, maybe not necessarily interceptions, but completion percentage, decision-making. Drew Aller is not the problem, and Penn State is secure at quarterback. Last time I checked, Ohio State has a first-year starting quarterback, not a veteran player. Julian Sam might have all the potential in the world, but he has never started a game. Oregon is without a quarterback. Okay, they're going with Dante Moore. Has he started? Is he a veteran? Not exactly. Arch Manning, first-time starter. I think he has all the potential in the world, but Penn State does not have a better situation with its starting quarterback compared to anybody else in the country. Speaking of which, they also have the best running back tandem in the entire country as well. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen should have absolutely gone off to the NFL, and they did not. According to Mel Kiper, whether you like him, whether you hate him, had them ranked as the 5th and 6th running backs in this year's NFL draft. So Penn State is returning an NFL quarterback prospect who's going to be a third-year starter and 2, not 1, but 2 fourth-year co-starters. These 2 have been the starters at Penn State for the longest time, and they're coming back for a 4th season when really they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. They would have been 3rd and 4th round picks at a minimum in this year's draft. So now Singleton and Allen are only going to get better. And then there's the depth behind them. Oh, but Penn State doesn't have any receivers. Who are they going to throw the football to? They're going to run it at you 100 times and then some. You have Singleton, you have Allen, and you have 3 pretty talented running backs behind them. You are going to see Singleton and Allen on the football field at the same time. This was a team that ran the football over 600 times in 2024. They're going to do it again and then some. Michigan. I bring up Michigan. If you want to talk about Connor Stallions, I'm here to talk about X's and O's and personnel. Michigan, it is not impossible to win a national championship without an elite wide receiver. Michigan did it. Roman Wilson was by no means an elite wide receiver. He gave them enough. Who's to say that Kyron Hudson couldn't give them similar production? And somebody who can block, most importantly. Penn State's going to lean on the ground game with Singleton and Allen, and then they're going to spread the football around. It doesn't need to be about one playmaker. You can get the ball to a former 5-star tight end in Luke Reynolds, a Khalil Dinkins who has been with the program now for 4 years. You can also throw the ball to running backs. Did you forget about that? Singleton and Allen can be reliable receivers. You also get Kyron Hudson out of the transfer portal and Devontae Ross, who now gives you a speed threat and forces teams to respect the deep ball. Andy Kotelnicki is going to have a field day with all of these assets within the offense. He can get very creative with all of this. And then, as I mentioned earlier, they have 4 out of the 5 starting linemen from this past season returning. In addition, they got TJ Shanahan out of the transfer portal, a former 5-star prospect who started half of the season at Texas A&M. Offensive line has never been better. Running back situation has never been better. And that's really saying since Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley was that superstar, that Heisman caliber type of player. Since Saquon Barkley, Penn State's running back room has never been better overall in terms of the quantity of available players. Kyron Hudson does not have any issues with drops. He is a reliable receiver that can catch anything that's thrown his way. I think more importantly, he is a blocker on the outside. He is going to give you blocking ability. Julian Fleming did not show up in the box score, but he showed up in a lot of other ways, and that is why Penn State's ground game reached another level this past season in 2024, because you had wide receivers who were not afraid to block, and that is what Julian Fleming was. So just because they don't have a number 1 wide receiver, they don't have an elite wide receiver, they don't need one. Michigan won a title with this exact same formula. You retained your quarterback, both of your running backs, a bulk of your starting offensive line. You had playmakers to go to. Were they elite? Not necessarily, but they're good. They're capable. They're competent. And then you are getting ready to construct, I think, at a minimum, a top 5 defense. So you have an offense that plays ball control, does not turn the football over, has home run ability with the ground game, coupled with now the best defensive coordinator in all of college football with the players that I named on defense. I'll rattle them off again. Deny Dennis Sutton is a future high-end NFL draft pick. I think Zane Durant is as well. You're going to get better football from Tony Rojas. You're going to get better football from A.J. Harris. Zach Wheatley, they're deep in the secondary. Dom DeLuca is that veteran returning captain. He will be a 3-time captain. He's back as your starting linebacker. You're getting players that were afterthoughts because they were injured the entire 2024 season. You're getting Zariah Fisher back. You are getting Keon Wiley back. These guys would have been contributors in 2024, but now they're ready to go for 2025. They are well rested. Penn State, if you want to say wide receiver is a question mark, that is understandable. I'm here to say they don't need that because of what they have returning at quarterback, running back, offensive line. as well as tight end. Former five-star prospect Luke Reynolds is waiting in the wings. Is he going to be Heisman caliber like Tyler Warren? No, I don't think anybody is, but he's going to be pretty darn good sooner rather than later. So Penn State is set up well for success with arguably the best overall coaching staff. This extends past the coordinators. This extends to the assistants who they're going to have on staff as analysts. Oh yeah, and James Franklin as well. Everyone thinks James Franklin's a bad head coach. He built this staff. Penn State is in the best place possible. This is the number one team now going into the 2025 season. Texas certainly deserves respect. Ohio State and Oregon are going to build through the spring. Whatever weaknesses they have, they will address them in the spring transfer portal window. Georgia's going to be right there. But Penn State has the best setup out of all of those teams that I named. They're number one team in the country going into the 2025 season. That's where we will finish up with. Let's go through the comments one more time. So that's going to do it from me, but I want to hear your thoughts one final time. See if I can find my spot again in the comments section. Appreciate all your thoughts and reactions and everything. Zach, you called it. I won't take credit for this. I was optimistic. I can say that I was optimistic because the writing was on the wall. The sources that I'm in contact here in the Penn State bubble were also because it gave me reason to have confidence as well. It was blind optimism mainly from Oklahoma and Ohio State that this was going to happen and Penn State was never a factor. And everything that I was hearing and everything that I was seeing on the opposite side was that was not the case. Why are people coming to this conclusion? So that's how it all led to this. Feel bad for Anthony Poindexter, but we needed this if we wanted a title run. I don't feel bad for Anthony Poindexter because there is the understanding that he's going to move on eventually to bigger and better things. His alma mater is going to have a head coaching opportunity very soon. He is world-renowned. He's well-respected at the University of Virginia. That is what is due for Anthony Poindexter. There was this understanding that he didn't want to be the official play caller, the official defensive coordinator, because he has bigger goals ahead of him. I wish him well. I don't want to see him eventually leave on staff, but this was the right move for everybody, for Penn State, for Jim Knowles, for Anthony Poindexter as well. God bless James Franklin. Penn State is going all in for 2025. Yes, they are. This is truly all in. And this is a commitment from the university for James Franklin. There are no excuses. If Penn State somehow falls short, then yes, this is truly on James Franklin, but he made the best offensive coordinator hire. He made the best defensive coordinator hire, and he was able to retain everything. Andy Kotelnicki was going to get a head coaching job this cycle, and somehow they brought him back. They get Jim Knowles away from Ohio State. Who do you think did all of that? Who do you think worked all of that? James Franklin. Where are all the Buckeye fans? Yes. I was reliably told that this was never going to happen. I was insulted left and right for thinking that this was even a possibility. I want to shout out my sources for just saying, hey, this is not the case. It is not a done thing that his fiance is going to bring him to Oklahoma. Ohio State is making an offer, but it's not the best setup right now. There is tension. There is tension at Ohio State between Jim Knowles and some other assistants. See, Penn State doesn't have the talent like Ohio State did to win a national championship. I disagree. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, pretty comparable to Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I'd argue that Singleton and Allen this upcoming season are going to be better than Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Will Howard to Drew Aller? Look what you can do when you have an offensive line, a ground game, a defense to take the pressure off of you. Drew Aller does not need to be perfect. And I'd say that Penn State's probably not finished in the transfer portal. They're going to go get possibly another wide receiver target if they don't think Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross are enough. I don't blame them. Go get more depth. The more the merrier. Penn State has the talent. Just because of one game doesn't mean that Drew Aller is a bad quarterback. Singleton and Allen are elite running backs. Offensive line is going to be one of the best in the Big Ten, maybe even one of the best in the country as well. And now you give Jim Knowles the key to a defense that has NFL prospects all over the place. Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, AJ Harris, Zach Wheatley, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford. I feel like I'm missing Keon Wiley. I think, again, is just forgotten about because he didn't play this past season. It's an NFL prospect waiting. Elliott Washington. Zion Tracy. That's a lot of talent. That is a lot of talent that Penn State and Jim Knowles have to work with. It is national championship or bust for this 2025-2026 season. Penn State has gone all in. James Franklin has everything he needs for this season. There are no excuses anymore. That's going to do it for this edition, this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I wish I could get to everybody's comments, but I got to wrap it up around half an hour here. So thank you so much for spending. This is championship weekend in the NFL. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to hang out here on Locked On Nittany Lions and contributing your thoughts, your reactions, your comments in the live chat. We're certainly going to talk about this more extensively over the week, what Jim Knowles can do schematically with Penn State's defense, the 4-2-5, everything. So keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you again for checking out the show. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. We do this every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and we talk about more than just football. We talk about basketball and wrestling. All your favorite Penn State sports teams are right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.